following participant has entered the conference.
Joe Walton.
The following participant has entered the conference.
Jack Matheson, Mathison.
The following participant has entered the conference.
Dan.
The following participant has entered the conference.
Dan.
The following participant has entered the conference.
Chris Walsh.
The following participant has entered the conference.
Ron Herring.
The following participant has entered the conference.
Katie Moss.
Hello everyone, it's Bennett up here.
Hey Bennett, this is Walsh. I only have missing Walt Boyer and Charlie Falk. I think I told you Marlene Barner probably won't be there. And Jack Nicholson is on a trip.
Jack Matheson is on call.
Jack.
The following participant has entered the conference.
Charles Polk.
I didn't hear.
Hello. Yes, Charlie, it's good to hear your voice.
Jack Matheson is on the line.
I have you, Jack. The only one that we seem to be is missing is Walt Boyer. Pardon?
I didn't hear my name, Judy Moss.
Yes, I have you down.
Okay, thank you.
So Walt Boyer's the only one I think that is not with us at this point. Bob Nicholson is on a trip, so he will not be a participant. And Marlene was afraid that she would not be able to be here, so those will be -2. So we'll wait for Walt and Boyer for a minute or two. But I think we'll just go ahead. It's now 1:31, and so I think we will proceed. We have that there is a quorum.
The following participant has entered the conference.
Marlene Barner. Oh, you are here. Good enough. Good to hear your voice, Marlene. So at this point, then we have the presence of a quorum, which is the majority of our board. So we now have the quorum. And for the consent agenda, we just need to approve the minutes of the 23rd of July meeting were approved by Dan Seeger, or Dan Seeger had submitted all and had made whatever corrections there were. So those seem to be all set. Joe Walton submitted the financials, and that seems to be set. And
President Walsh?
yes, sir.
This is Bennett. I think Dan Seeger's on a cell phone.
Yes.
Seeger, if you have a mute on your cell phone, we're getting a lot of your background noise on the call.
Sure.
And so when you want to speak, you just unmute it.
Right. Got it.
And then I think it's in the middle of California someplace. Is that right, Dan?
That's correct. He's on. Yeah.
So anyway, I hope your trip is going well. And so the agenda will stand as set, except that with the addition of Judy Moss's agenda item, which is related to membership, and that will be if that is on the agenda as well. So with that, this chair would have a motion to accept the consent agenda, the consent matters.
So moved.
And that's Jack. Was that Jack Matheson?
Correct.
Yeah. So moved by Jack, and I think seconded by Judy. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and so we will proceed with that. And because the agenda seems to be really action-packed, we're going to move things around just a little bit, so that I've asked Ron Herring if he will talk to the development of the chapter membership plan and and all things related. So Ron, I'm going to turn this over to you at this point.
Okay. If you have your agenda that was sent out
Frank reminded me that we have activities in 2 or 3 other states, namely Texas and Ohio, and I think the other state was Washington, where this question is also time sensitive in terms of how we're going to perceive membership based upon board conversation of July 23rd. Just as a reminder, that material, Jack I've asked him to recirculate it, and we did pass the pilot project, and at some point in this conversation we want to give Bennett the opportunity to talk about what we had asked for in that board meeting on the 23rd, which was how the pilot would be shaped, who would be included, and what some of the metrics were, and I think he's prepared to do that. The other refresher that I would add to the conversation before we get into the conversation is that sort of the driving forces that we identified in the July 23rd meeting still exist, and the pressure is still on. Finances is still a critical issue for us, and as the famous saying goes, we can't fiddle while rain burns. On the other hand, we have different opinions about what it means in terms of membership that we have to debate and come to some consensus on. The issues are basically what, as I read it, is what kind of membership creates a short-term infusion of both members and finances through a pot, and then what are some of the other options? And we have 3 categories of membership. One is the individual, the other is the community, and the third is the chapter. And there is some concern that some of those options, namely the second 2, are options that do not generate, depending upon how they're interpreted, that don't generate the revenue because it shortcuts the idea of revenue coming from the individual if it's in a community membership or a chapter membership in some ways. And that's where the confusion is. And Judy, if I have overstated, understated, or erroneously stated your question.
Confusion.
Yeah. So that's what we have to resolve, and we need to do that with better activity than our Congress does in terms of how we get the problem on the table and how we solve it, because it is becoming increasingly more time sensitive for us. Now, I think it may be appropriate at this time, other than questions, to ask Bennett if he would then produce for us and share with us what we asked him to produce, which was to flush out what pilot means, who's going to participate in it, what the financials of that were, what the net gains might be, and how long we would run it. So if there aren't any other questions of me and my effort to summarize here, then I think, Bennett, we could turn to you and you could fill us in.
Sure. I think just to make sure, I would say, I guess, what people could do is maybe hold questions kind of to the end, and then I'll certainly respond in kind. I purposely didn't submit any document for today's meeting, primarily because I wanted to kind of gauge any additional questions that might be present that I could include in our final submission for the board to review. The bottom line is effectively, I've shared with a couple of the officers a draft pro forma relative to, taking the resolution that you discussed a month ago and took that into consideration as far as what the objectives are and things like that. And I'm going to walk through verbally with you maybe kind of the recommendation of the path to take, and then based on any questions you have, add to the pilot program kind of white paper, if you will, and then I can send that back out to the board based on your inquiries today. The bottom line is, and you'll hear it in the financial report too, I think everybody understands that you have to get both organic and new member growth. pilot program primarily, it has two tiers. One is to use the Estates at Carpenters model, which we actually have already executed, if you will, whereby we're taking an existing continuing care retirement community where you have a base of members and creating a process that makes it efficient for them to expand their membership base at that grassroots level where you already have a presence. I think going back to your July resolution, primarily we're talking about where you have untapped markets and creating what we're using the term chapter only to define it, for categorization purposes, not in terms of a governance structure or anything like that, but where you get 25 or more members. So, in talking with some of the officers, I think assuming this kicks off September 1 or October 1, you basically would run a 12-month cycle so that you've got a full calendar year, or a full fiscal year, a 12-month cycle for the board to analyze the ROI of the pilot program. And so a performance metric that we're suggesting is that we would get 10 CCRCs where no members exist today, and each of those would generate at least 25 or more individual NaCCRA members, and give them a path to join, as a quote-unquote a chapter. Now, what I need maybe some feedback from the board on is, to some extent, you're basically looking at untapped markets where there's an assumption that a state association doesn't exist. So it's to some extent to give them a home, to get allied with an organization that's got a like mission and purpose. And so that's the primary driver, that we could use this as an entree to attract them rather than just targeting, one resident at a time. We give them some type of, package, if you will. And there's been some discussion, obviously, as far as the rates of the dues if they take that type of package. The bottom line is it will take money to make money. And when you get into your budgeted planning for 2014, our best guesstimate is the first year, meaning the first year of the pilot, if the board's motivation is to generate net income. I'm going to be very frank with the board. I do not believe, if you just take individual membership as the level of joining, that you're probably looking at, close to a break-even endeavor from a financial standpoint. You would gain 250 new members, but you would have some corresponding expense to do the outreach and the marketing and direct mailings and things like that to reach those people, to get them in the door and create, to get a presence in 10 new places that you're not in currently. I think in year two, then clearly, year two, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to have hopefully a high retention rate of those 250 new members, and so their dues the next year effectively is going to be gravy. And then if the pilot program does work, the board could obviously consider replicating the process again. You may look at different performance metrics of what your targets are, but you effectively would have money to reinvest to go out and tap into the next 10 and the next 10. But year one, as any pilot is, you've got to be willing to make an investment, because if you have an assumption that this costs $0, that is an incorrect assumption. And we're not talking about management services. We're really just talking about operational expenses for postage and printing and stuff like that. So to be able to reach these target audiences and get them in the door. But there, as all of you know from your previous careers and backgrounds, there's no additionally, and you've got to have a little bit of funding to kick this off. So I think my biggest question is for the board is to kind of determine how far out you would like to maybe see, I'm using the term pro forma or a revenue and expense kind of spreadsheet to kind of show, at what point this pilot program, if you will, once it's successful, starts to turn a net income. Clearly you would have new revenue coming in, but you will have some expense that first year if you for obvious purposes. So I think the key is to understand kind of what you would like to see in terms of the pro forma, so we include all of those variables so that you have confidence and also understanding of what the pilot program is intending to do and how it would operate.
Questions? Observations?
Jack Matheson, are you taking life care memberships into consideration?
Lifetime? Is that your question, Ms. Beth? I think to be conservative, you really couldn't project how many of these new people would join as a life member. I think clearly we can all assume that some will. My concern is, since there's no history, is to project what that revenue stream looks like. So I think your safe bet is to only look at, the individual level, dollar dues amount. And anything, let's just say 25% of join a life member, then your pro forma obviously is going to be way ahead of the game, and it's only going to be a good surprise, not a bad one. So
this is Jack Cumming. I just add one thing that Bennett didn't touch on was that to form a chapter, they would have bylaws and adopt a local organization there. And I wonder, since Charlie has experience with this from Florida, where it's been successful, I wonder if Charlie would have something to add to what Bennett has told us.
Yeah, my experience has been not only in Florida, but on a national level, from getting community members. In Florida, when you get a chapter, it may only be 25 members to start the chapter.
Right.
But that 25 base gives you the ability to expand out. In fact, we have some communities in Florida with 700 and 800 members that started with 25. And that's the beauty of the chapter concept, is 25 expands into larger numbers. Very seldom do you have a chapter that just sit at 25. But to get this, really, all you need is to come up with one individual in a community that you can talk to plant the seed and let it sprout, and then when it starts germinating, go back to that community and speak with the residents association, and then you see the 25 emerge, and then from the 25 it blossoms out. We've in essence done this throughout the country with the chapter of the community members until just recently. Now, I think Jack Cummins and I probably, I want to say, is the oldest active members in NaCCRA, and I don't think either of us have ever had any confusion that individual members is one thing and a community membership does not bring into the fold all the community residents. It only brings the residents' council into your fold, and you use that vehicle to expand your individual membership. It was never, ever intended to replace individual memberships, and I don't know how that idea sprouted up other than Al LeBlanc. It's actually promoted it and caused it to spread, I think. But I guarantee you, it may not work in every state, but everywhere I ever went and spoke with the residents, we ended up with a larger number of individual members, and in a lot of cases, a community membership, as we have now in New York and Pennsylvania and Connecticut and all around the country. So I think all we're doing with chapter is changing community membership chapters, and as we evolve, I think you're going to see a great expansion of memberships. I think we can easily hit 50,000 in a year if we all work at it.
I am completely confused now. Would you define community member and chapter member? I had been under the impression that if you had a certain number, say 25 individual members at a community, you could form a community membership, a community organization with bylaws, as Jack stated. How would that be different from a chapter membership? Would a chapter be several CCRCs, several communities?
So a real simple answer is we have no chapter memberships now. We do have community memberships, and when a community joins, they join as their community association, and they receive 10 copies of the Lifeline, and at one time in the early stages, they were given a representative on the national board.
But our bylaws have since changed.
They had no requirement to have any individual members, but when we get a community member, you see rapidly community individual memberships grow.
This has been, I think, that to answer Mrs. Moss's question, I appreciate Charlie's feedback. We're only using the term chapter to give it a name. So if chapter is confusing to people, we probably could come up with different terminology, because all the chapter name is, for this purpose, all we're trying to say, it's a community where you've got 25 or more members for purposes of the pilot program.
Okay,
it doesn't change anything. Community association membership still exists. People could take that route. So it's only to define for purposes of the pilot project.
Okay.
Bennett,
I'd like to ask a question that's difficult for me to participate because of the muting. This is Dan. Yeah, I didn't understand what Bennett had said about the cost of the first year's pilot project. Bennett, you spoke of breaking even. Did you mean breaking even in terms of both staff time invested and out-of-pocket expenses like postage and telephone, or did you mean only breaking even in terms of out-of-pocket expenses?
Well, I mean, at this point, given the framework of the scope of work, we at least for the pilot program, we're offering to do it at no cost, depending on what the final metrics the board agrees to in October, assuming that's when the start date would be. So it's the break even, if you will, is all related to postage, printing, web-based outreach, those types of things, to actually, sending of brochures, to those communities where you've got the interest.
As I understand it, Bennett, when we have 10 communities, we will generate $3,750 in gross revenue. And then we'll add to that the community due, which adds another $1,500. So 10 communities, between
between the dues collected from the individuals and the dues paid for community membership, we would generate $5,250 gross revenue. Now, our expenses would be assistance to the community in establishing bylaws, marketing, contact in some way with the respective communities. And there's hundreds of them all over the country. But just to get a handle on the cost, the revenue and the cost, am I right on the projection of gross revenue?
It depends on what metrics you're going to target. I mean, the original pro forma I've drafted, yours is a little bit higher than what I'm projecting in the first 12 months. And again, that's not taking into account any of them that join as life members or anything like that Mr. Matheson, put on the table.
No, I'm assumed in my calculations that all 25 that come in each community will come in at a $15 annual fee.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, you're effectively talking about 250 members at $15.
Right. Yeah, right.
Right.
$750.
That's correct.
That each of the communities that put together 25, after they've collected that money, they also need to submit a check for $150 for community membership.
That would be a reasonable assumption, yes.
Okay. So,
And then our bylaws need to be changed.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about how that happens and how do the bylaws
doesn't change the bylaws in any way, shape.
the bylaws for the chapter.
There are two aspects. Number one, I think that Article 3, Section 5 of the bylaws does allow the creation of a chapter membership. It doesn't explicitly speak to it, but it clearly allows it. And we've never really enacted that section of of our bylaws. The question of bylaws for the chapter is to give some form to the chapter so that they become a true community organization. Now, the communities already have a resident association, but the resident association primarily interfaces with management on local matters, and the NaCCRA chapter would be focused more on external matters of advocacy and the like. And so it is appropriate to have a local organization with officers and the whole thing. I did want to ask Bennett, since you didn't touch on it, the chapter memberships within FLICRA, do they all independently have their own bylaws as independent chapters?
In that situation, they do. I for one wouldn't propose that structure at the national level, given the resources that NaCCRA has at this point. I don't think it would be manageable. But in the Florida case, the answer is yes.
But do you have a sample of any of those Florida bylaws so we could take a look at how complex it's going to be?
And it's actually Mr. Herring could probably reference it, but because it's kind of encompassed in some of the documents he's working up for the state council of state chapter presidents. But yes, we have a model bylaws for local chapters, if you will, in the Florida structure.
Ruth, this is Jack again. We put together a draft of a guide that could serve for NaCCRA, and that does include a template of bylaws which were adapted from the Florida model, but were adapted so that they would allow the creation of chapter identities among the NaCCRA communities. There is a specific element that we ought to touch on, though, before we go too much farther, and that is, in California, we'd like to have CalCRA come in as the state association at some point. We're hopeful that that may occur, and we don't want to do anything that would be competing with that. And I don't think that the formation of NaCCRA chapters in
The following
California
participant has entered the conference.
would.
Boyer. Okay.
Hello, Walt. But anyway, I don't think that the formation of NaCCRA chapters within California conflicts in any way with CalCRA, and they would likely become the same thing. That a NaCCRA chapter would eventually be also and simultaneously a CalCRA chapter, just as in Florida, a FLICRA chapter can automatically and simultaneously be a NaCCRA chapter.
I'm perhaps missing something here, but the fundamental objective is to get 25 members in a community where we have 0 members now.
Hey.
Can't we simply do that with other kinds of incentives and waive all the requirements for bylaws? You know, we've said that it's easier for individuals to join directly without first having to put together an organization. You know, you go into a community and you advance this idea, and weeks and months go by before all of these things get in place. Why don't we simply say, if you get 25 members, we'll give you a discount on dues in the first year. Instead of paying 15, you pay 10. And then in the next year, it'll go back to the normal level. But as an incentive for you to join together, if we get 25, we'll give you a discount in the first year of dues.
That's the question that I had, the way I read it, that a community membership costs less than 25 individual members. And that's where I'm stuck on understanding individual memberships and community memberships. The dollar amounts of each. The income for 25 individual members versus the income from one community member.
I guess this has been here, and I think you have to make sure that you distinguish the two, and so lack of a better term, I mean the community association, you know, and again it's defined in your bylaws. It's been present all along. The community association, if you were looking at it in any other way, it's basically a supporting member, which is comprised of effectively a resident council, plural, resident association, resident council, plural, in that community. It does not in any way diminish the need and the objective to have every resident in that continuing care retirement community to belong. They're totally distinct paths. Mm-hmm. And the goal for NaCCRA is that people take both paths. You know, that you have all the residents who wish to join NaCCRA join individually, and the community association, you know, itself also hold a membership in NaCCRA, quote unquote, as a supporting member. And so I think that's during the last year when you've gone through the bylaws, I know that's been a bone of confusion, but I just think you shouldn't really mix and match them because they're totally distinct purposes. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Are you using community membership the same as the resident association?
I mean, by and large,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But by and large, that is who is writing the check.
Okay, then I have a completely different concept of it. Here in Channing House, if I could get 25 members, we would have our own association. It would not be part of the Residents Association.
That's right. Yeah. Bennett, if I could add a comment also, the beauty of the chapter or community, either one, is that when the president wanted to get some information out, it's much easier to get it out through state presidents and community
association or community chapter presidents to all the residents, and it's a great communication link.
Yeah, this is Ron Herring, and as some of you know, I've started some initiative to work with state chapter or chapter presidents. This is one of the key words in my conversations with them that they keep making reference to, and that is the communication channels between what's going on in NaCCRA and what's going on at the state level, and that communication moving back and forth at a very high level with certain kinds of information into what we call the communication. So I would want to emphasize what Charlie is saying. If you talk to chapter presidents in the states, as I have on the phone and in a conference call, this is what they're telling you.
And are you saying that resident associations and community associations would be the same? Would there be two organizations?
They would be two organizations. I think what Bennett meant was that usually the people who are active in a community are the same people, but there are two organizations with two purposes, and I think it's they've kept that separate in Florida. That's been what we've been putting forward for NaCCRA, and I think what you've just articulated, Judy, shows that it's important that that be done. But I did want to raise, what action do we need to take today to move this forward?
The following participant has left the conference.
Jack Matheson, Mathison.
This has been, I would only respond just from a kind of I guess I'd say a non-voting capacity, obviously, is I believe based on the resolution that you passed in July, you gave a green light to launch the product. The only thing that we really need to do now for the board is basically provide the board with the pro forma of what the pilot program looks like, and when you meet in the fall, to effectively sign off on the performance metrics that you would like to see as the targets. But I think that's all. As far as from a governance standpoint, that's the stage you're at.
Bennett, do you believe that you have enough information about performance metrics, or do you think there are that's a weak link in the chain?
I guess based on what I've heard today, I think we weren't too far off the mark of probably where people were thinking. So I think I've got enough context with some of the questions that were posed. I can kind of refine it a little bit further and then send that out to the board in the next day or two.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be wonderful if you could do that. And then we will. Do we need a motion to give you the go-ahead to proceed?
I think you already done that.
I don't think that's necessary.
All right,
yeah.
so just go for it.
Joe Walton here.
Yeah.
Bennett, may I suggest that when you put this together, can we call it a participating association membership? And drop this community and chapter business, because I really think those terms, you're right, they have become confusing. This is Ron Herring again. Just a comment about some of the activity in Virginia.
The following participant has entered the conference.
Jack Matheson.
In Virginia, that state chapter is considering doing away with that whole idea of calling themselves a chapter for that very reason.
And what are they going to call it?
That it's confusing. They would just do away with it.
Uh-huh.
So there is confusion there, but I think the kind of clarity that has emerged in the conversation for some of us who are not either old-timers or been close enough to this, it becomes a little bit clearer. And anything we can do, and this is a personal bias of mine, and I'll state that up front, anything we can do that simplifies what our goal is to our benefit.
Yes.
The more complex we make anything,
I don't care whether it's membership in NaCCRA or whatever it is. If we make it too complicated, particularly for people in the retirement environment and culture, it will diminish the effect if it's too complex. So a guiding principle for me is just to urge that we be as simple and direct and clearly understanding for the average person in the pew, so to speak, to understand. And we can see from our conversations that even those of us in leadership positions, if you take a person like me, you can explain me. Well, you're just a new kid on the block, and I accept that explanation. But for some of you, even some of you who have been around for several years and engaged, have had confusion. So that supports and affirms what I'm suggesting to you, that whatever we do, it be as simple as we can make it.
Madam President, Charlie Paul, can I give about a 2-minute report on what's occurred here at the estates?
Sure.
Bob Smith, based upon the meeting NaCCRA meeting that was held here back in the spring,
right,
has already formed a NaCCRA organization with President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, Program Chairman, and etc. He's got all the residents that live in the community who are current members of NaCCRA, has signed authorization for management to collect their dues in September each year and forward one check to Bennett. He's also given each of those members the task within the next 90 days, come in with one of their neighbors, be it a couple or a single man or woman that's a neighbor, who are not members of NaCCRA, to bring them in with their dues, joining NaCCRA, with the intent of doubling the membership within the first year. Now, he did this just based on listening to the meeting that occurred here and the discussion of membership. And this was done with very little effort. It took 2 meetings on his part, explaining it to the residents. And if you get an aggressive individual in each community like that, it's a real easy process to do this. Thank you.
Okay, Charlie, and I guess the bottom line is keeping it simple, as Ron had suggested.
Yeah, and Joe Walton here again. Just stay on that point. I'll use Seabury example. There are 12 individuals in this community, individual members. To get 13 more, I would approach the rest of the community and say, we're going to launch a participating association. It's going to be effective October 1. To the 13 new members, their dues are due on October 1 in the amount of $15. To the 12 that are already members, their effective date will change to October 1. But they will be given prorated credit for the money that they have already achieved. So now we have 25 people in the community. We have a common effective date for each one. Perhaps we could take it a step further, as has been done in Florida, and convince management to make a deduction from monthly dues. But even if we don't do that, just in the way that I've described it here is a simple means of increasing membership, adding the value of convenience.
Great. So, Bennett, how does that all work for you when you're getting your plan?
I can incorporate the commentary today, because I think coming up with a different terminology to help it so it doesn't make it more confusing is a very good suggestion. So I have pretty good clarity on what's
ready. And I guess the bottom line is keeping it simple. And let's try for there.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much. And Ron, anything more?
I don't have anything else, and then I would yield this item, which we've converted into number 5. You are back on discussion of item 4, the leading age formal relations.
Great. So anything more on the development of chapter membership plan? And the pilot program will then proceed, and you get the effective date, Bennett, so we can work on that come October.
Yes.
Alrighty. Anything more on that? And I thank you all. This is wonderful. Now, we have a little time constraint because it is now 2:15. How many people have to go off at 2:30? Or is there anybody that would object to we went on till 3 o'clock?
No, sounds like the answer is no, so I would say let's plow ahead.
All right, let's go for it. So thank you so much. And Judy, are you all set now?
Moderately.
Moderately.
I'm waiting to see what Bennett puts in writing, but I think the fact that we are now getting rid of community membership as a category is helpful.
Alrighty, and so we'll think positively for you, and so we will proceed on then. So if you would just go back now to your original agenda, and we are at the leading age form. Yeah, Bennett. Did you have something to say?
No, that wasn't me. That was Ms. Herring.
Oh, Mr. Herring.
You're back at item 4 on the agenda,
yes.
The leading age conversation.
Yes, I am.
And that's your item, Ruth.
Yeah, I got it. There was a very small ad hoc committee that was named because we had talked with members of Leading Age, Larry Minnix and Stephen Nogg, and we decided that, or he invited us to come to Washington to attend a meeting between our small select committee and that group, so that we could begin to think about how we might possibly work some sort of relationship. And so we went down there, and there was Walt Boyer, Ron Herring, Jack Cumming, Bob Nicholson, and me, and we met with Larry and Stephen Nagg, and started in about 10 o'clock or so on Thursday, the 8th of August, and met till about 3:30 or so, and it was a very productive meeting. What we decided before we even got there was that we had to talk about what we wanted to happen and how we would like things to happen. And so we had some questions for our small group to kind of ponder before about what we needed to know from Larry and from Stephen. And one of the biggest things was what drives Leading Age to seek a relationship with NaCCRA at this time. And then the other question we had was what specific issues, if any, would diminish Leading Age from considering a working relationship with us, how we could work together, how would NaCCRA residents be able to serve on Leading Age committees and function in Leading Age life of that organization, and what, in addition to Leading Age leadership and management, are the opinions and engagement of providers regarding a cooperative relationship with NaCCRA. And generally speaking, it was very, very positive. We came away feeling that, things are possible. And what we had done was to submit to them a sort of a draft, a relationship of what we would like to see happening between NaCCRA and Leading Age. I think the biggest issue for us was that we needed to maintain our integrity as an organization. And we did not look to be swallowed up by anything else. We needed to maintain our leadership with the people from continuing care residents throughout the United States, and how we could possibly work together to work so that we could begin to expand even more out into the other. There are 50 states, and we really are looking probably at a dozen or so states that we or have pretty good contacts with. Meantime, Bob Nicholson was really anxious to get some information going on how he could work with Leading Age to try to get more and more people involved and knowledgeable about NaCCRA. So we really had a very productive meeting. Jack or Walt or anybody would just chime right in. But we did talk all day about the possibilities. And the major focus of the discussion was on shared values and principles, and that each organization needs its independence and its integrity as an organization. I know that NaCCRA contains for-profits as well as not-for-profit providers, and Leading Age generally is a not-for-profit, and yet I know that the for-profits come to the Leading Age workshops and organizational conventions because there's meat for everybody, regardless of what your group is, or whether it's homes for the aging or nursing homes or whatever it is. So we decided finally, after a full day, and it was great. It was great fun. It was also soul-searching. And we decided then to proceed with the creation of a memo of understanding that would be the basis for reporting to our organization and also to Leading Age. And it was now we are in the process now of sort of pondering. I know that it's been 2 weeks and people were going on vacations and this sort of thing, so we're really waiting we've done our thing. Jack, and Ron, how about the memo of understanding that we have just been working at, trying to make it brief and yet succinct but meaningful and contains all we need to have?
This is Walt Boyer. Jack and I have been exchanging some emails with ideas on this, and I've been putting together a draft, which I think I may get out today or tomorrow to you all. It essentially, I think it's going to fit on one page, quite frankly. It's very small. But essentially it says that we recognize that we have many areas of common interest and that their related individual goals may be more readily and successfully achieved through cooperative mutual endeavors and pursuit in concert. It has several parts to it. Very briefly, the first part is that the officers or the representative shall meet from time to time and develop develop areas of interest, mutual interest that they want to pursue, and to facilitate that, they may invite the other party to have their members participate in their standing committees and other committees. Once the leaders have decided on an issue they would like to consider, they will prepare a joint letter of intent. That letter of intent will establish a joint committee of members of both parties, define the subject they're to consider and any boundaries that they may wish to impose on the discussions. The purpose of the committee will be to develop and propose a mutually agreed description of the issues involved in the subject, a mutually agreed goals and objective to be pursued, and mutually agreed general plan of action. I emphasize the word general, not specific, for achieving those goals and objectives. Once they have that agreement, they can then report back a proposal to the governing bodies of both of the parties. If the governing bodies approve that proposal, or if they want to make some amendments to it, and they both agree on the amendments, then they will issue a letter of agreement which will define their plan of action, the goals, objectives they want to achieve, and how they're going to proceed, which party will take on each piece of the appropriate plan of action to pursue.
That's a guess. And as the big issue, I think, was trust. And
yes.
And
we get
so,
feedback from
places. Yeah. But it was. We were really very, very elated at the tone and of course, as I told Larry, traditionally, Leading Age has been very, very good to us as an organization. We attend the conferences at no charge. They have comped our exhibition booth. They have done very, very much, and they've really asked nothing of us in return other than to participate with them and to share in some adventures. And I think Charlie's being honored a year or so ago as one of the 50 most influential people who have been working for people of CCRCs and our aging population. And, it's been a very good relationship. I guess we're just trying to cement a little bit more. And here again, we were very elated. Jack, anything else you want to add? Or?
Well, I know that Dan Seeger had some questions about it, and he may represent some of the concerns that people who weren't there might have. So I wonder if Dan, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am on the call. I've been on mute. Well, the story that Walt just gave didn't, how should I say, exacerbate my concerns. They alleviated them.
Good.
Well, since you plan to circulate this one page, or it sounds to me like it must be more than one page, but anyway, since you plan to circulate that soon, I'm not going to try to summarize it in the minutes, which will inevitably be a vocalization or garbling of it. So I'm just going to put the minutes that we could expect this draft in a few days. But as you described the draft, it doesn't raise the fears that some other earlier versions did inspire in me.
Well, and I understood that, and I was with you 180% on that, because we really do need to maintain our integrity as an organization, and that was never in question.
And one of the things that Larry emphasized in our discussions was that he had people that he wasn't sure were going to be very happy about an agreement between Leading Age and NaCCRA, and he was going to have to convince them that this was good for Leading Age as well. And I'm hoping the way I put this together will help to ameliorate some of that fear also.
Great.
I have a question and a comment. And the question, I think it was in the draft, the opening sentence, it said concern with all senior activities rather than CCRCs only.
That was in the original, draft. But
that's okay.
Yeah.
And then my other comment is a general one, that please remember that without us, without the residents, there would be no such thing as Leading Age. So when you say that they give us a free deal, we are paying for it. We the residents are paying for Leading Age.
Yeah, but because of the kindnesses that they not heap upon us, but that they really ask nothing of us, and that as a resident, we are their guest.
However, as a resident, we are paying for it.
Well, Judy's point is very. Can I say something?
Sure.
Judy's point is very important philosophically. It's only an accident of history that we are small and weak, and they are big and affluent. Their bigness and their affluence all occurs because we pay for everything that they do. And when they go to, Denver and stay in $350 hotel rooms, we are all paying for that. And it should be the other way around. We should be big and they should be small, and we should be directing them not supplicating that. So, I hope I'm not, sort of carrying
I hear you.
too far.
We hear you, and we are very aware.
This is Ron Herring. Dan, I think one of the comments that one of the issues that I raised that Ruth mentioned was the question of Larry Minnick's. We're getting background from somewhere, and I wish we could find out where it is.
It's probably me, and I'll beg off. I'm in the airport in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, bless your heart.
So
Okay.
I will sign off.
Okay, Marlene, thank you.
Well, anyway, Dan, more appropriate to your observation and remarks, I think most of us agree with that. But when I raised that question, and some of my colleagues that were in the meeting can check me out on this, when I asked the question, why now? I think the answer was because we see the voice of consumers rising on the horizon.
The following participant has left the conference.
Please, Garner.
And I think that is a very, if that's his true feeling and his true statement, and it can be captured someplace so that we're all reminded of that. I live, as many of you know, in a facility, and the best example I can give you that is if you want a case study of how not to run a CCRC, send me a letter and I'll try to compose it for you. Now, what is happening here is that top leadership is beginning to shift. And I want to be bold enough to suggest to you that the consumer voice is now beginning to be heard in this particular CCRC. And there is some hopeful sunshine on the horizon. I think that's what Larry Minnick was trying to communicate. I hope that's what he said it that way because the consumer's voice needs to be heard. That's the way I heard it. And I think there is growing concern, stimulated by the recession or whatever the stimulating event was, some of the lawsuits, some of the bankruptcies that have occurred, that is beginning to chip away at this resistance that the residents don't mean much. I think they're beginning to see exactly what Dan is talking about.
Yep.
That if this beast raises its ugly head, and I don't want to put it in negative terms, but this is where the advocacy role and the integrity of who we are and the message we're trying to bring is beginning to take hold within the industry. And I really believe that. So I think if that's true and that can be promoted out into the future, and if Larry's assessment of his organization is accurate, the thing that Jack raised, and I would share with all of our board members, one of the things that was missing at the table was one or two representatives of the providers themselves. Not the leaders of the organization called Leading Age, but the providers themselves. We would have had a little bit of an extra insight into how a provider might think about this without finding it on the table of a board agenda before they had a chance to talk about it. But that's my contribution to this conversation.
Ruth Jackson Matheson, of my 8 years with NaCCRA, I think this could be potentially one of the greatest achievements that I know of. As we know, Leading Age has contact with the executive directors of all CCRCs.
Exactly.
And indirectly, this becomes an entree for us. And I think this might be one of the greatest achievements that has been that has occurred during your presidency, Ruth, and I just salute you for it.
Well, I thank you, but it's been a while. It's been a long time coming, and we are really elated that we are now talking and that there are all kinds of things that are possible. So we're just going to be thinking on a very positive note, and I think you'll be interested in Walt's draft, and please critique that carefully, and let's go from there. Ron, anything else?
No.
Okay, and it's now almost 2:35. So if anything else for good of the service on that one. And it was really a great meeting, and Ron and I became good riders of the Metro on top of it all and didn't get lost, so that was good. good.
If you want to know what a sardine in a can feels like, ride the metro at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I've done that many times.
Well, it was really exciting. But I'm going to tell you, I don't need to do that every day. But it was a great day, and we thank you for your support on that. So let us now go to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the fall meeting in Dallas. I hope by now you have received some information from Leading Age, and there are all kinds of wonderful workshops that are available to us. Our board will be meeting, and I've written you this before, but just to reiterate, on Saturday evening, most of us are staying at the Lawrence Hotel. And so we'll have a dinner meeting at that point about 6 o'clock, and talk, and eat. And then the next day at 9 o'clock in the morning, we will have our NaCCRA meeting, which will run from about 9 to 11:45. And Jack and Ron and Catherine Pearson will be doing a big presentation, an interactive presentation. Jack, you want to speak, or Ron, to that one just real quickly for the program for our NaCCRA meeting?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm the leader of that. I think I'm sort of just the inventor of it. But so it's Ron's thing. But the morning program would be an interactive discussion facilitated by Catherine Pearson and Ron on the future of the CCRC, and I think we've been hitting on some of the elements of that today. I mean, one of the things is consumer, if you want, or resident sensitivity to the needs of residents and their wishes, because up until now, resident suggestions are often treated with disdain and that sort of thing. So I think it'll promise to be very interesting. Ron, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things I hope we can do is that, having been, for as many of you have, in different ways in your careers, you've learned that didactic presentations by people in meetings like this are probably the worst enemies of people's sleep habits and eating habits.
That's why we got you at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and so my hope is that Catherine and I, and we haven't consulted on the core issues that we want to cover here yet, but my hope is that we can make some remarks that have some capacity to stimulate some good thinking, and then we open that up for presentation at either a round table. And third, my observation would be, and I'll share this with Catherine when we have a chance to have some conversation, is that what we want to do is we want to capture that information, because we're going to have a diverse group of people.
The following participant has left the conference.
Capture whatever it is that they feed back as they look at the future. We don't want them to just hear from people like Catherine Pearson and Ron Herring.
So we hope we're going to make a real good 3 hours worth. And in there also, I want to have a quick rundown on your committee action and some other committee reports, but the bulk of it will be this interactive.
Yeah, that's fine. We haven't done very much over the summer.
Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely. Just to bring us all up to date.
Yep.
And I know that I hope you all have gotten the registration materials, because and the hardest part you're going to have is the fact that you have to decide which of these many workshops you're going to want to attend. So I think it'll be a very fascinating 3 days.
The following participant has entered the conference.
Dan Seeger.
Okay. We also have the exposition hall, and we have a booth that's been donated for us, so it has a rug and a couple of tables and one chair. But we're going to try to interest people as they go by on learning about what NaCCRA is. Everybody in past years has always said, "What is that?" And so that's part of our work, is really to educate everybody who's going through, the providers, the residents, and also some of the people who are also presenting in their exposition. So we're going to, I think, have a fun time doing that. And think it'll be a really great thing. So is there anybody that's had problem trying to get their registration for the conference?
Well, some of us are having it done by Leading Age out of their office, but I don't have it yet, so I'm not worried about it.
Well, don't fret just yet, but anyway, it's going to go well. I'm very sure. And so, if you need the room numbers, it is not in the first brochure that we get, which we got in from Leading Age when we were there. There is everything under the sun except the NaCCRA meeting and where it's located. So if you have your pencil, the 9 to 12 NaCCRA meeting will be in ballroom C2. And it's at that point that Ron and Catherine will be talking, and we'll bring you up to date with everything that we can bring you up to date with. Then right at 11:45, we will go over next door to ballroom C1, which is where they're going to have a complimentary resident networking luncheon, and we'll have luncheon there. And then we have special seating arranged for us in the main ballroom for the opening session, which begins at 1 o'clock. And the first speaker is going to be Amy Mullins, who is evidently very inspirational, and she had lost the use of her legs, I believe it is, an amputation of her lower legs, but she is undaunted, and she set world track records as a model. She's graced pages of magazine and so forth. So, and then there are two other speakers. One is Dan Pilata, and another Dan Butner. So it'd be interesting to hear those. So then the exhibitors will be on. There will be all kinds of educational sessions, and at 3:30 on Sunday is when Ron and crew will be having their educational section, which is section 79A, a progress toward resident engagement. And that's kind of a follow-up on what we did last year. Ron, anything that you're gonna dazzle us with, or?
No, I haven't given a whole lot of thought to that, except maybe just a few introductory remarks, and then let the members of the panel pick their own experiences and their own interests in resident participation, and encourage everyone to respond to those things, and again to contribute also from the audience. So my hope is that we can stimulate commentary from the group who is to take the responsibility for this conversation, but to pass that back to the audience and get them to agree or disagree or share something different in terms of how residents do that. I can name 2 or 3 examples in my own facility, like trying to get a bowl of soup out of a container that was so high off the floor that you couldn't get the dipper in it without spilling it when you pulled it out. And only a resident can tell you how that works.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be I know it'll be fascinating. And, when we did our presentation last year, and we had a packed house. I think there were something like 250 people in that workshop. And we kept waiting for our report card. And we never got anything. What has happened that we didn't, why was it that bad, or what was it? Anyway, Larry said when we were at Leading Age that we got one of the highest reports they had ever received for a workshop. So I think that was the impetus for what's the follow-through that they're going to be doing Sunday afternoon, and maybe some future workshops down the road.
So this is Ron. My comment would be, and Jack may be the best person to answer this because he can capture information and communicate it. Is there any information, audio or otherwise, at that meeting that would give the participants a clue as to what last year was like?
Jack, did you film that?
Yeah, it's on the website, and you can watch the entire conference from last year.
Okay, so it's on the NaCCRA website, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All
right.
And for that I am so grateful, because there have been so many great things that are on NaCCRA that nobody's ever been aware of. So that, yes, you can watch that. But we had a tremendous audience, and there were providers, there were residents, and it worked like a champ. So I hope that will just be the prelude to many more. Anything more on and you best make your airplane reservations come into Love Field, just closer to the convention center. And
the only comment I have, Ruth, is I think this applies to both Marlene and myself. Delta is changing our reservations as we speak.
Really?
And we probably won't be getting in until about 3:30 or 4. So we will, a 5 o'clock meeting is problematical for us, but we'll do our best.
We're going to make it 6 and hope you can stagger in.
Yes, okay.
All right.
Another comment in terms of air reservations, I tried to make mine with U.S. Air, and that's the major airline out of this metropolis that I live in called Roanoke, Virginia, and they don't even have an option to go to Love Field.
Really?
Yep.
So you got to come into the other one.
You got to come into the international.
Okay. But if you have an option, love is best, is what they tell me. Okay, anything else on the meeting? All right, then we're on to the Council of Chapter Residents, State Chapter Residents, and Ron has done a massive job.
We've had conversations individually and had our first conference call that was not very well attended. We had 3 presidents of state chapters, one that is not a member of NaCCRA, the one was Margaret Griffin in California, but she participates anyway and wants to participate.
Good.
Jack,
and why isn't she a member then?
well, that's got a piece of history that I think Jack could explain better than I could. But anyway, we had with that group, we had a pretty good conversation, but we're not ready to move forward in terms of anything formal, recommendations back to the board of NaCCRA in terms of formally establishing the Council of State Presidents.
Okay.
I get confused about what to call them. Is it a Council of State Presidents? Is it a Council of
State
or is it a State Presidents chapters?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the descriptions, even going back to our conversations again about membership, because those conversations also influence how you name something like this once it matures.
Yep.
So we're still, I guess the bottom line is we're still working on it, and we'll just have to wait until we can try to get more people on a telephone conference call.
Ron, Charlie Paul, can I make a suggestion to you?
Yep.
Would you consider bringing in the presidents of the community association from states like New York, the District of Washington, and any other state that does not have a state association where you can begin to develop a relationship in those states as well?
Well, I think that would be fine, but I don't know who they are, where they're located, and how to communicate with them.
Bennett can give you that information in a heartbeat.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And, there are some states, like I think Bob Nicholson's been working valiantly in Oregon, Washington State, and others to try to get something going. So, it's doable if we just persevere.
Okay.
And I'll get you some names from D.C. too, because those are nice, great people.
One of the key issues, as I mentioned earlier, is this communication flow. A second issue is legislative activity. Communication flow, good communication, what's going on in the states, and legislative activity, either things that have happened, standards that have been passed, or legislation that has been passed, as well as what's going on from the point of view of legislation and advocacy in each state. They're hungry to have that information.
Yep, that's true. Okay, anything more on that?
Question, Joe Walton here. The state associations that did not respond, Connecticut, example.
There was, to my knowledge, Joe, I don't think Connecticut responded.
No, they did not. No, did Massachusetts. And my question is there a plan to follow up on those states that did not respond, or those that did, but were not unable to participate on that.
Yes, those folks got the notes that I took of the meeting with an indication that we would be back in touch with them to set another conference call later. But they did get, and two of the state presidents did not just not show up for the conference call. They indicated that they had developed other commitments and could not be on the conference call. So the answer to your question is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe, for that question, too. Anything else on that one? So we will go on to poor Ron. He's working his little self out. For item 8, which is the board manual update. And what I asked Ron to do when we first began with our new bylaws is to come up with a policies and procedures manual so that the stuff that we have to live with day by day are in a policies and procedures manual, and every time we turn around, we don't have to amend the bylaws. So really, the policies and procedures manual is going to be our guide as we proceed, and I know Ron has been working very diligently on that. So, Ron, could you just bring us up to date?
Let me just give you a little expanded version on. We're going to call the board manual, and inside the board manual, it will include sections on procedures and a section on policies. Both, and it will be the policy and procedures will be broken out into, for example, recommended policies and policies that have been adopted by the board. So you can go right to that section, and if there are any policy considerations that are proposed and under consideration, for example, the Bill of Rights, it will be identified as a proposal. If it has been passed, like the governance proposal that I put on the table and was adopted in July, it will be in a tab called Policies Adopted. And so you can search through there and you can find it. And I'm going to distribute it at the board meeting, and I'll walk you through a 5-minute orientation session as how to make it effective for you to use. The other comment I would make about it is that it is not a completely finished product, because there are pieces of information that would be called for in a board manual that we have to work on as a board. A committee needs to be assigned. Somebody has to give us an organizational chart that fits the new bylaws. And so what you will see is for example, organizational chart under a certain section in there, and you'll go there and you'll see a sheet of paper that says must be redone.
Yeah, and
I don't have the capacity in this task to redo all of that, so that's going to have to be deferred till later. So
and you take a look at our structure now, and it's like, oh my gosh. So that's
it will overwhelm you.
It has already. I'm trying to do some of this.
Overwhelm you. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to see some places where you're going to be alerted to the fact that this board needs to do some work in certain specified areas that isn't complete, or has not interjected the new bylaw requirements and so forth. So that's what you will see. But it will direct you to that and tell you as a board what you need to do.
Oh, and we need that. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you. And then, Dan, you're not on the agenda, but I know that you've been working on the possible for the what am I trying to say?
Bill of Rights.
Thank you very much.
Right.
How are you doing on that?
I have one fellow committee member, Al LeBlanc, and I have 2 proposed committee members that Jack kindly referred to me. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid I've been a little too busy to advance this right now, but I'm remembering that I'm supposed to report back, I think in the meeting, not in October, but the following meeting, and I will get on the stick and advance this as fast as I can.
Thank you so much. I just wondered if you, in any progress that you've made, because I know that's going to be quite a job. And I thank you for doing that for us. And I know that also, if you look at number 9, the exploration of expanded support from partners. I don't know what we would do without Bennett and his office. And Bennett, you want to speak to that at all on possibilities? Because we really need to.
Yeah, I think just only that we're kind of work in progress. When you get into October's meeting, presenting some a la carte options. So when you get into budget discussions for 2014, you can determine what the needs are, and we had a couple of conference calls with some of the officers to kind of explore where the group feels like the needs might start, and then the full board could kind of effectively look at those and pick and choose which ones you think will have most priority, and then determine what could be afforded as you expand your reach, then maybe layer in additional staff resources as you go. So that'll be a report that the board will have for October.
Thank you so much. Any questions of Bennett? And we thank you for your support. I'll tell you, you've been wonderful, and you and your shop are just really great. And anything you have to ask Bennett? No? So the only other thing on our agenda is the non-resident membership, and I know this caused great discussion at our meetings. I think for many of the not-for-profit groups, they do have resident members on their boards of directors. But for the for-profits, generally speaking, there are no residents on those. But it's been a kind of a thorn in people's side that, it's our money, how come we aren't represented better, and why can't we sit on boards? And so if that's the case, then why, if we have been denied membership on other boards, why should we deny membership for people who are not residents on our board of directors? So that's something we need to speak to and think about. And when I look at Catherine Pearson and some of the really great resource people we have, they would be a great source of not solace so much as support for us as we go along. And Jack, would you just speak real quickly about the merits of reconsidering this section of what we had considered under bylaws?
Well, I'd just say that the idea here is not to diminish the influence of residents or to detract from our mission of serving resident interests. The idea is that there are certain people who have a unique expertise, Catherine Pearson being a good example, who might strengthen our operations if we were to be open to allowing them to really work with us. And the board has been pretty evenly divided on whether this is a good idea or not, so I think we want to let it continue to percolate so that we evolve toward consensus. But I know that Ron Herring particularly has some people who he thinks could really help to strengthen us, and it's not a matter that we would be turning over authority to the providers, but that we would be looking for expertise that could strengthen our mission of serving the residents. Ron, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I can. I'm an advocate for diversity on boards, but I'm not an advocate for stacking a board with a bunch of people who are not basically in control of the vision and the agenda and the mission of the organization. But I've had a couple of experiences where people were attracted to my board who made outstanding contributions, and the reason they made outstanding contributions is that they brought a diversity of view on a number of issues. And there are a lot of people out there, I think, as Jack has said, Catherine Pearson is one. We have, if you want to boil it down in its simplest terms, we only have one set of eyes on our board, and the only set of eyes we have and ears that we have and brains that we have are resident eyes, ears, and brains. I don't say that to diminish what we have, but I'm interested in the enhancement that can come from somebody who comes from an entirely different world and is not a resident. And people like that often can give you credibility, and this is what I experienced, where I had an unusual opportunity at one point in my career to have a retired U.S. Attorney General on my board. and we were trying to initiate a new program design to frame within the organization's service portfolio, and he had background there, and he spoke to that, and he turned the board around in 15 minutes in a board meeting as to why we should do it, and he had credibility that somebody else on my board would have never had. And so that's my contribution to the conversation. I know what the fear is, but I think in some ways, if you do it right and you select the right people, and it has a tendency when you bring the non-resident, for example, to the board, you begin to think a little bit, and they begin to bring opinions and ideas to you that can be very helpful to you and that you might not ever get from a resident of a CCRC.
And that's absolutely correct. And so I want everybody to think on this and pray about it, and let's see what we can come up with as we go along, because we're going to have to reconsider that. And
well, may I say something? This is Dan.
Sure.
The car has stopped, so I put myself off mute and participate a little bit better. The thing is, I appreciate what Ron has said. I come from a background of work in Quaker organizations, both on the staff and on boards, and we have a long tradition of incorporating into our decision-making bodies people who are not friends, people of diverse backgrounds, people of all kinds of persuasions. So I'm not unused to the idea, but I would say that in the case of NaCCRA, given our present condition, given the overwhelming, how shall I say, disproportionality between the organization leading age and ourselves, which I think should be the reverse, that these people are hired to serve us and we pay them, and we should have a big organization, they should have a small one. I'm very reluctant to see us exacerbate this very unequal proportionality by putting providers on our board. Now, someone like Catherine Pearson is obviously a little bit different, but there are many ways we can incorporate Catherine's expertise into our life without necessarily sort of confusing the issue of our board by making it ambiguous. I'm a little concerned that before I came on the board, this apparently was hashed through and was decided, and we're bringing it up again, which sounds like, there's, how shall I say, there's an unwillingness of someone to sort of accept the decision of the board and wants to keep reopening something which has been decided. And that doesn't sound like good board process.
No, well, the problem was, it was it was a split vote, and so, Anyway, just think on it, and we'll see what happens down the road.
May I?
Yes, please. And then we're going to have to stop.
It seems, based on the discussion today, we ought to combine with leading age and anybody and have one great big organization. We were losing the effectiveness of a resident organization. And we might as well be one and pick out the people we want to represent the interests of everybody. The residents, the providers, the professionals.
Okay. Any other comments? I just thank you so much for putting it. It's been an hour and a half, and I really appreciate your time. And we will be back in touch. I know we're going to see each other before too long, and we'll see about another conference call closer in. But we'll talk about that and be back to you. Is there anything else for us? And I just thank you so much. And Dan, I hope you had a little bit of time to have some fun.
It's been great fun, and this has not been too much of an interruption. I do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your doing this. It really, really. And so, but that's above and beyond the call of duty, and we really appreciate that. Thanks so much.
In closing, I would like to repeat something that the judge who wrote the appellate decision in the Miranda case lived by. He was married to my sister. He said, every day that I wake up But above all, more important is to be happy.
Oh, good for you.
So I wish you all be happy.
Thank you. And close that quote, will you, when you send the draft?
Okay.
I'll try to.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Thank you, Bennett.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, one
Thank
and
you,
all.
Ruth.
Alrighty.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Just sign off.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
The following participant has left the conference.
Dan Seeger.
The following participant has left the conference.
Ron Herring.
The following participant has left the conference.
Bennett Napier.
The following participant has left the conference.
Jack Matheson.
The following participant has left the conference.
Walton Boyer.
The following participant has left the conference.
Judy Moss.
The following participant has left the conference.
Charles Polk.
The following participant has left the conference.
Joe Walton.
The following participant has left the conference.
Bruce Walsh.